acknowledge everybody behind me. I appreciate the members of law enforcement, the district attorneys, the other elected officials, the crime victim advocates that are with us from all across my Senate district. And we're here today because we are in the midst of what I am calling a public safety crisis. We're lending our collective voices to an issue that is affecting every community across this great state, not just here in the 52nd Senate District. And I am, of course, still 4 weeks into the legislative session, still talking about bail reform and discovery reform. This, of course, is an issue that was brought forth in the darkness of night without any public input. 3 weeks since the law went into effect, and the undeniable consequences are affecting public safety throughout the state of New York and the city of New York. Here is what bail reform and discovery reform have done. It's creating a revolving door that is indiscriminately shuffling violent, nonviolent, and repeat criminals in and out of the criminal justice system as their crimes continue to multiply. This law has effectively stripped judges of their discretion to prevent violent criminals, domestic abusers, and sexual predators from being from being held, and they're being released back into the community. Case after case has shown that the state's failure of this law is making communities, it's not making communities any safer. In fact, it's making communities less safe. Advocates are claiming that when we speak out in a collective voice that we're fear-mongering, it's far from fear-mongering, when in fact it is reality. Here are a couple of other facts. It's a fact that across this district alone, dozens and dozens of individuals have been released after committing crimes like endangering the welfare of a child, strangulation, assault with intent to cause physical injury with a weapon. It's a fact that in New York City alone, crime is up in the first 4 weeks by 11%. It is a fact that there's been a 32% surge in robberies, a 15% surge in burglaries, 67% surge in stolen vehicles, and a 30% surge in shooting. Here's a fact. In Broome County, a man charged with endangering the welfare of a child, criminal obstruction of breathing, and aggravated harassment has been released because of bail reform. Here's another fact. Here in Broome County, a guy charged with DWI, kidnapping, second-degree menacing with a weapon, criminal possession of a weapon, having a prior conviction, released because of bail reform. It's a fact that under this new law, no matter the circumstances, prior criminal history, or the facts of the case, judges are being forced to grant mandatory release to individuals arrested for manslaughter in the second degree, child abuse, sexual performance of a child, criminally negligent homicide, and failure to register as a sex offender. Clearly, we are putting criminals before the safety of law-abiding citizens. And today, all of us are joining countless men and women across the state, whether it be law enforcement, district attorneys, crime victims, advocates, and we're saying enough is enough. And the message really is for my tone-deaf colleagues in Albany. That's what that message, that's what that message is for. My colleagues in Albany are tone-deaf. They have completely turned their minds and their eyes to what the vast majority of New Yorkers want. The Senate Majority Leader, the Speaker of the Assembly, and this governor of ours have had opportunity after opportunity to do what's right, and they have failed us. They are instead burying their heads in the sand. We, of course, are calling for an outright repeal of the law. The political reality, though, is that that probably will never happen because of the Democrats who are in charge of both houses. And if that repeal can't happen, what I am asking for is that we fix the law, but we fix it by listening to the people who are behind me. These are the professionals, not bureaucrats in Albany who think they're doing what's right. Many people here want to speak today, so allow me to introduce the mayor of the city of Binghamton, Mayor Rich David, who has been a fierce advocate when it comes to public safety, amongst other things. Mayor, I appreciate your friendship, I appreciate your support, and I welcome you to offer a few words. Mayor?
Thanks very much, Senator. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. So take a look around, and what you see behind me is you see the chiefs of police of the top law enforcement agencies in Broome County. You see several district attorneys from various counties and sheriffs, all speaking in one voice, the elected leaders and public safety officials talking about how problematic this law is and the direct impact it's not only having on municipalities, but on the police department's ability to comply with the law. One of the things that mayors across the state are being asked to do is meet with their senators and assembly representatives to advocate for the changes that Senator Akshar is outlining today. And so I'd spoken with Assemblywoman Lepardo and Assemblyman Crouch, and during my meeting with Senator Akshar, it went exactly how I thought it would be, and that's in the first 5 seconds of talking about this, he told me to stop talking because I was preaching to the choir, because he gets it. And obviously as the individual who put this group together today for us to speak in one voice, I just want to thank you, Senator Akshar, for your leadership on this issue and bringing us together so that we can speak in one voice very loudly to talk about the problems, the absolute problems that are in place right now with regards to this law. So certainly in the city of Binghamton, we provide approximately half of the cases, give or take a little bit, that go to the Broome County District Attorney's Office. And from the discovery standpoint, it is extremely problematic with this new 15-day deadline. We've had to add personnel to our police department, another unfunded mandate from the state of New York. And frankly, we're not sure if we're going to have to add more personnel, because this is such a moving and evolving target. And when the mayors met with the governor's representatives, they are still unclear on exactly what is applicable with this law with regards to parking-related tickets or building and permit violations as well. And coming back from Washington last week with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the New York mayors met with Mayor de Blasio, who certainly is an advocate for the change in bail, but also had concerns about discovery and what that meant for New York City with their traffic violations, their violations in building and permits. We have the same concerns here as well. So this law, without question, is not making New York State or Broome County or the city of Binghamton safer. It is extremely problematic. It was not well thought out. And as we're seeing now in Albany, it's very clear that the district attorneys were not brought in the loop on this. The chiefs of police were not brought into the loop on this. Elected officials across the state of New York, quite simply put, the individuals who are responsible for implementing this, following these guidelines, were not brought into this at all. And as you can see, we're now seeing what the unintended consequences are of very few putting this together, and how quickly it went through Albany under the one-party rule. So now those key architects, or some of the key architects, are now taking a step back, and we're glad to see that there is some recognition that much needs to be changed. And we are advocating for complete repeal and a reevaluation. Certainly that's one of the positions of the New York Conference of Mayors, but there's a laundry list of changes as well that Senator Akshar is outlining that we fully support to become a reality, because we fully intend to comply with the law, but it is extremely problematic, and we're concerned about what happens when people that should be in jail or should go to jail are immediately released back on the street. And across the state of New York, we're seeing horror stories. And at what point is enough enough? Where we're risking people's safety and the safety of our community for a law that everybody knows doesn't work, and even those responsible for passing it and crafting it are saying we have to come back and take a look at it. So every day that goes by, we are endangering the residents of New York State. So Senator Akshar, again, thanks very much for taking a leadership position on it. And what you see here today is literally going on in other counties across the state of New York. And we know with your leadership, there will be action and results on this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mayor. So I'm going to introduce the sheriff next, but before I do that, I just want to say thank you to Cindy O'Brien, who is with us as well. She is the majority leader in the Broome County Legislature. Cindy, I want to publicly thank you and your entire conference for standing up and supporting the measure to repeal such a terrible law. With that, let me introduce our host, of course, a very near and dear friend of mine, Sheriff Dave Arthur. Sheriff.
Thank you. Last week, the sheriffs got together at the conference and discussed this long sessions, and actually sending a letter to the governor opposing a number of his law changes here. But I want to go back because we're going to all talk about the bail reform and so forth, but how about the poor innocent victim? The victim is forgotten. Let's remember the outlaw, the criminal. Let's remember him by getting him turned loose easier. Where the victim, the hell, nobody cares about that victim, whether they got beat up or whatever. Nobody cares about him anymore. That's the attitude of these people down in New York City and our governor. You know, that have a crime such as robbery, burglary of your residence, not to be on the list of people being locked up is ridiculous. Just because it's an everyday occurrence in New York City doesn't mean that we upstaters have to put up with it. The governor only goes where the votes are, and that is strictly New York City. He can't win upstate, so he's supporting them, and he'll do anything he can to back those people down there with their laws that they come up with their changes. So I'm going back to the fact that victims are forgotten about, the governor could care less, and the legislative body. Next, how about the officers out there doing the job every day? Tangling with the people that are criminals, fighting with them, only to turn around and have to turn them loose because you can no longer lock anybody up. You got to give them an appearance ticket. So the officers fight with somebody and turn around, here's your appearance ticket, and then end up another fight. That's not fair. Where's the fairness there? Those are just some of the instances. We just had one over the weekend where the guys had to battle with somebody hiding in a dresser and had to fight with him to get him out of the dresser. He's turned loose. So we don't have to go back to the same residence again and try and pick them up. These are everyday things that are happening. It's disillusioning. The other thing is the senator pointed out, the mayor did, unfunded mandates, additional personnel. I mean, we have an officer now that's not even on the road anymore just to help keep up with the discovery laws. That's one less person patrolling. For us, that's a lot. And we're not the only ones. Other agencies have had to hire 2 or 3 people. Nobody in the state's paying for that. Just us, the taxpayers, by loss of personnel and our taxes going up. I'll stop.
Sure.
I'll get wound up.
Sure, thank you. Sheriff DeMunn from Delaware County is with us as well. Sheriff, can you come up and offer a few remarks? Thank you.
Again, thanks to Senator Akshar for organizing this press conference. He's been a steadfast supporter of not just of law enforcement, but really what's right in our communities. I think everyone can agree on that, so thank you, Senator, for doing that. Just this morning, I was on a conference call on my way down here with a bunch of my colleagues in regard to bail reform and the possible reform of the reform. And one of the things that that was pretty compelling that we heard was the Senate individuals and the Assembly individuals who were responsible for crafting these laws are actually making the statements that they had no idea that we had these concerns. And that is absolutely unconscionable. It's unconscionable, and they're lying about it. All right? I'm just going to flat out say they're lying about it. They're lying about that just like they lied when they put all this information out there beforehand saying all these laws were going to be nonviolent offenses. We heard that regurgitated over and over and over again, nonviolent misdemeanor offenses. Well, we all know how very violent these offenses are now. And the response now is to back away from it or to walk away from it saying we didn't know. That's unconscionable. It's it's a flat lie. And I'm here to tell you that we have been engaged with them since last fall. We were engaged as sheriffs, we were engaged as chiefs, we were engaged as district attorneys, together, collaboratively, across the state since last fall, warning them of these very real consequences. And you know what their response was? We don't want to hear you. We weren't even invited to the table, okay? So the lies just continue. And it's a shame that these are the things that have to be said now about these very real situations. I implore the legislature to do what's right, to actually look at the situation. We predicted that these things were going to start happening, these terrible atrocities were going to start happening on a daily basis. Well, guess what? They're happening on an hourly basis right now. So time is of the essence. And I'll close with saying, I was asked the other day, I was in front of a group the other day, and they asked me what was the most difficult part of being a sheriff. And my response is this: the most difficult part of our jobs, and it's not just the sheriffs, every police chief that's out there, we send people into harm's way every single day. And we're responsible for sending those people into harm's way every single day. And those days have just become a lot harder. And if they're a lot harder for law enforcement, I can certainly assure you they're certainly harder for the people that make up our communities, that are trying to work, live, and raise their families. Thank you very much.
Sheriff, thank you. Sheriff makes a good point, right? You know, these folks are the ones who voted for this. They said, yes, this is a good idea, right? So my colleagues across the aisle, specifically the Long Island Six, and Senator May, Senator Metzger from upstate New York, they voted for this. And they're a day late and a dollar short in terms of now introducing their own legislation to repeal this or to change this. This is an issue that they thought was very good, an issue that they thought was important to pass. And unfortunately, the response you're seeing, the sheriff says they lie. That is the truth. They're lying, but they're lying because of the political realities. They understand that this issue is so big, and this is an issue that probably in their own minds they don't believe that they can overcome politically. We need to continue to keep up the pressure for sure. Sheriff Harder talked about the victims. Sheriff, thank you for doing that. Incredibly important, and with that, I'll introduce Rainey Bauden-Distel from the Crime Victims Assistance Center. Rainey?
Thank you, Senator, for having me here today. I really appreciate the chance to bring a voice for victims to the table. I'd like to acknowledge your efforts and talk about how important victim services is and how important victim advocacy is and how this is making our jobs more difficult also. And I'll give you a prime example. One of the things I can speak to is when we work with a domestic violence victim, one of the things we do is do some safety planning with that person, right? How do we keep them safe when this is over? Where do they stay? How do they move forward? And do that in a safe manner. And now there's little to no time in a lot of cases to do that. A lot of cases have been highlighted about unintended consequences, negative consequences throughout the state already since this legislation's been passed on January 1st. My fear is that these types of incidences will continue, potentially grow in number, and potentially even escalate in lethality. I'm hoping that some reforms can be made to this legislation, reforms which include the voices of victims in what we know to be a criminal justice system, which many days already feels like an uphill battle for the clients that we serve. So with that, I just want to say it means an awful lot to me that you have me up here with all of this law enforcement. I have a lot of respect for everything that you guys do, and I just really appreciate being included. I think it's hugely important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We all make the world go round, Rainey, and we just want to thank you and Rise for everything that you do on a daily basis to keep people safe as well. I want to thank my friends from Organized Labor. Where's Billy? Come on up. Council 82 is a statewide organization that represents countless members of law enforcement, countless members of corrections. Specifically in my Senate district, Council 82 represents the Binghamton Police Department, represents the Broome County Sheriff's Office Corrections Division, as well as the Delaware County Sheriff's Office, both the Road Patrol and Corrections as well. Billy?
Good morning. My name is Bill LeBeau. I'm the staff director for Council 82. We represent about 4,000 members in law enforcement across the state. I appreciate Senator Akshar inviting me here and giving me a moment to speak on behalf of the men and women in law enforcement that are on the front lines trying to protect their communities. With this legislation, it was passed as tied into the budget without any debate. I'll reiterate what everybody has already said up here today. You're re-victimizing victims again. You're making it more dangerous for the communities. You're making it much more dangerous and frustrating for the officers that have to wrestle with these criminals on the street to get them handcuffed, arrested, brought in a given appearance ticket, and walk them out the door knowing that there's a good chance that it's going to happen again. If they want bail reform and discovery reform, listen to the leaders that have done it forever. All the people you see behind here and around the state, the district attorneys, the sheriffs, the chiefs of police. Listen to the experts that know. Don't tie it to the budget. We read articles and see a lot of information on social media where a lot of these politicians that have voted for this say, well, it was part, it was tied to part of the budget. We didn't realize it. And I'll reiterate what Sheriff DeMond says. That's just not true. That's flat out not true. Then if you did that, then shame on them. All right, for passing this and making the communities much more unsafe. So when they fix this bill or hopefully repeal it, I hope when they have this discussion that it's not tied to the budget and it's just three people in a room making this decision. Listen to the leaders. Listen to everybody around the state. It's much more unsafe for everybody, and I want to thank Senator Akshar again for giving me an opportunity.
Thanks, Lieutenant. Appreciate you. I appreciate you and everything that Council 82 does for the men and women that you represent. Billy. Thank you. The police chiefs that are in the room, Chief Dodge, offer a few remarks. Chief, anybody? Chief Gary?
Thank you, Senator. So I want to say that I think there was room for some sensible bail reform, but this act badly missed the mark. I just want to relate to you a story that we experienced in Johnson City here recently, where we arrested a defendant in a domestic violence case where he started an argument on domestic violence incident reporting from domestic violence victims. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. So I think the Chief brings up a really good point, and I guess to the media, if you've listened to nothing I say today, please listen to this. I don't think there's a single man or woman standing up here that would argue that conversation and reform shouldn't happen where appropriate. All of this conversation is happening because of the Khalif Browder story, right? What happened to Khalif Browder in New York City should have never happened, right? But what happened after that, right? There wasn't a conversation about meaningful reform. I said to the sponsor of this legislation last year, Senator Jamal Bailey, it is one thing to have a conversation and speak about reform, but don't unilaterally dismantle the criminal justice system. And I would respectfully argue to all of you, that is exactly what my friends on the other side of the aisle have done. They haven't passed meaningful reform to bail or discovery. They have dismantled the entire criminal justice system. And nobody knows that better than our district attorneys. And with that, I'll introduce Broome County District Attorney Mike Korchak, and then District Attorney Mike Farisi from Chenango County. Mike?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone having me here, that I can stand with other elected officials and other members of law enforcement. I'm joining in the call for the repeal of these laws. If not, major changes, major modifications should be made. I'm talking to you from the perspective of the District Attorney's Office. This is day 27 of the Discovery and Bail Reform Acts. I'll address bail first. It's a major problem, and it's a community concern, a public safety issue. Individuals are repeatedly getting out of jail for low-level offenses that eventually lead to higher-level offenses. We need to give our judges more discretion as to whether someone is a danger to the community. That's not present in the law as it stands. We were told that it would be non-violent felony offenses and misdemeanor charges that would not be subjected to bail. However, if you read the statute, and unfortunately that's what I have to do as a lawyer, you read the statute, burglary in the second degree is a violent offense under New York state law. However, it's an offense that calls for immediate release under the bail reform. So look at it this way, someone breaks and enters into your home while you're sleeping upstairs. They're immediately released. Robbery in the second degree, aided by another. You're walking down the street, you get jumped by two guys, they knock you down, they steal your wallet. Both those individuals will be released under this law. Again, low-level drug offenses. Our major concern at the DA's office is that you have many repeat offenders. Individuals are not held in on bail. When I was in private practice and my time at the district attorney's office, individuals need treatment. They get it when they end up in jail, they hit rock bottom, they realize they need treatment. We're not looking to warehouse individuals in jail who have a drug problem, but that's where it starts. They get in trouble, they get locked up, they realize they need help, and they go for the help. That's not gonna happen. That's immediate release right now. My fear, and I hope I'm wrong, is a major rise in overdose deaths in this county. Nonviolent offenses are the ones they said would be released. Well, drug dealing near a school, those are all considered nonviolent offenses under this law and call for immediate release. I mean, do you want that in your neighborhood? Drug dealers selling near the school, they're immediate released. We need changes in this law, and we need it now. From the perspective of the district attorney, the discovery law creates a danger. We have 1,500 felonies and several thousand misdemeanors that come through our system every year. We have to comply within 15 days. All police reports, all witness statements, witness contact information has to be turned over. Grand jury testimony has to be turned over. Again, it's an unworkable situation. My fear is that witnesses will no longer come forward, knowing that violent felons will immediately get their grand jury testimony. And most times these felons will be out of custody when they get it. We fear of more witness tampering and more witness intimidation. It's out there, it happens. We had a trial in county court last week where a witness who was a victim of a crime was contacted by the family of the defendant, asking him if he was going to testify. This is a very real situation, very serious concern for public safety. We also have the New York State Police Crime Lab has informed us that they cannot keep up with the demand of the drugs that we send up to be tested. This is going to result in charges being dismissed against drug dealers and other drug offenders. Again, we're asking lawmakers to take a step back, get the input of judges and district attorneys, and make real changes to this law. Thank you.
Thanks, D.A. D.A.? I'll just be very brief. My name's Michael Farisi. I'm the Chenango County District Attorney. I do appreciate Senator Akshar for putting this together. A champion of public safety, Senator Akshar has always been and will continue to be. Unfortunately, right now, given the makeup of our government, he speaks from the minority voice and opinion. We need the majority to listen to us. What District Attorney Korchak said is absolutely accurate. On January 1st of this year, in the city of Norwich, we had a motor vehicle stop. As a result of a search, we found A weight methamphetamine, B weight cocaine, all packaged for sale. People, some from the area, some not from the area, all of them released. As they were walking out of the police station, they were laughing. That's not the intended, that's not what the law was intended to do and should not do. It shouldn't be based on whether an offense is violent or non-violent. It should be based on whether or not that person has the ability to return to court, will return to court, or, more importantly, whether or not the severity of that offense and the dangerousness that that person poses to our community. Many of the people that you are hearing about in the newspapers are repeat offenses. They've been arrested and they've been mandatorily released only to go and commit the same crime again. That's an unintended consequence of this law that really needs to be looked at again. I hope the legislature sits down and has meaningful discussions and doesn't just bring in the law enforcement aspect of it. There's a third area that really should be heard. They're a stakeholder as well, and that's our judiciary. This law was passed without the judiciary having any say, sitting at a table. Law enforcement, not present at the table. It came from the defense, and only the defense. And this is the result of what happens when you don't have meaningful debate on the floors of the Assembly and the Senate prior to making such sweeping criminal justice reform. Once again, thanks to Senator Akshar that we were able to do this today. Thank you. Okay, anybody else want to be heard? More than welcome. No? Okay. So fear mongering, I think not. Again, this is reality. And I think what you're seeing here is people from all different subject areas joining together and ensuring that their voices are heard. And for all these people behind me, this has nothing to do with politics. It has everything to do with the safety of people that they represent. And my suggestion to my, again, tone-deaf colleagues in Albany is to wake up and to listen. The DA Farisi just said something, it's our voice in the minority, and it is, where I am concerned in terms of representing this district in the state Senate. But I think it's important for people throughout this community and people throughout communities throughout this state to stand up and speak up because your voices are certainly being heard. Now, I think the political realities of this is that the Speaker of the Assembly is very reluctant to make any changes. He believes that both bail and discovery is a signature issue for him, and he's not open to making changes. But I do believe that the governor, as much as I disagree with him, is listening and hearing the people of this state, whether they be from New York City, they be from Western New York or the North Country, and he understands that, you know what, we have a problem here, and we should have listened to the experts before we enacted this piece of legislation. So rather than continue to lie about it, my suggestion is people come to the table, have a meaningful conversation, and fix it. With that, we'll take your questions if you have them.